The Fender Stratocaster and the Gibson SG are probably the two most famous solid body electric guitar shapes. And these guitars do very different things. But which one's the best for you? So in today's video, I'm going to be comparing and contrasting these two guitars here. This video isn't necessarily a which one is better video, it's more so me just showing you guys the differences, that way you guys can decide which one is best for you. If you guys don't care about the differences of the specs between these two guitars and all you care about is the sound, you guys can skip to this time down here. But let me introduce these two guitars to you real quick. This guitar right here is my 2019 Gibson SG Standard in Cherry Red. A quick little fun fact about this guitar is that it was made on Valentine's Day, which is just really cool. Which is why I actually named this guitar Cupid, because it kind of has little horns on it like Cupid does. So this is Cupid, my 2019 Cherry Red Gibson SG Standard. And on the Fender side of things, we have the 2021 Fender American Professional 2 Stratocaster in this, like, I think it's called Olympic white finish. It's not completely white, but if you can see it, it's kind of got this, like, almost like off-white kind of color to it. I'm not exact, eggshell maybe, but I'm not sure exactly what this color would be called. It's got that paired up with the tortoiseshell pickguard, as well as the 3 single coil pickups. But now that you guys have met these two guitars, let's talk about their specific specs. Well, to start off, let's talk about how these guitars are constructed. The majority of Gibson SGs will have a mahogany body paired up with a mahogany neck. You have the choice of the full-size pickguard as well as like the half pickguard, the 60 style I think it's called. Personally, I just prefer the full style, but it doesn't really make any difference. So mahogany body, mahogany neck, as well as a stop bar tailpiece. You can find these with Bigsby's, but these are just going to be the most common with just a regular Tune-o-matic style bridge and tailpiece. Not only that, but the Gibson SG also has a set neck design, meaning the neck and the body are permanently, well, for the most part permanently, just glued together at the heel here. And basically everything about the Strat is constructed in a different way than the SG. Fender Strats are usually made out of alder or ash, but you can find some different types of wood, and most of the time you will find them with maple necks. But again, you can find them with different types of necks as well. The Fender Strat, instead of having a set neck design where it's glued in, will have this bolt-on design here, which makes it really nice because you can actually take them apart pretty easily. But there is some cons, there is some drawbacks. These ones won't have as good a sustain because the neck and the bodies aren't joined together as permanently, meaning the notes won't ring out as long. And talking about the necks, let's talk about the fretboards. With the majority of Fender Strats, you'll get the choice of either a maple fretboard like this one, or a rosewood fretboard. While on the SG Standard here, you will find them only available in rosewood. However, there are like the SG Customs, which will have ebony. But for the most part, and with most of Gibson instruments, you get rosewood. I do like the choice that Fender gives you of the two different fretboards. I think it's really nice. Personally, I kind of prefer the maple on these guitars, but you can find them just as easily with the other one. Something I really like about the Gibson SG is the neck binding as well as the fret nibs. I talk about those a lot on my channel. If you look at the side of the neck here on the Gibson SG, you can see that the side of the binding goes up and covers the side of the frets. That allows the neck to feel a lot more smooth because you just don't feel the sides of the frets. While on the Fender side here, you just see the sides of the frets and you feel them all the way up and down the neck. Now with Fenders, you're pretty much guaranteed to get a great quality instrument, so the fret ends aren't going to feel sharp most of the time. But still, I still like the feeling of the fret nibs a little bit more than just the feeling of the sides of the bare fret. But that's just my personal taste. It doesn't really matter that much because, again, it's great quality. They're not going to be sharp. As I mentioned before, the Gibsons will have a Tune-o-matic style bridge and tailpiece here, which is very simple, while the Strats will most of the time have this trem here. These trems are really well built and they're really fun because you could do some pretty cool stuff with them. The bridge here on these ones just do nothing except for just keeping the strings in place, while the Stratocaster over here, you're able to use your whammy bar to kind of bend the notes, like this. You can't do that with the SG. Now, don't get confused, it's not like a Floyd Rose where you can go up and stretch the strings sharp. You can only go down, and that's the only way you can do it, although you can actually find some Strats with Floyd Roses. This Kramer here has a Floyd Rose in which you are able to go up as well as down, while on the Strat you could just go down. Now onto the pickup layout. The Gibson SG is just going to have usually a 3-way selector switch with 2 humbucking pickups. The way the selector switch works is if it's in the downmost position, it is the bridge pickup. If it's in the middle, it's both. And if it's in the upmost position, then it is the neck pickup. While on a Stratocaster, it is slightly different. You do have a 5-way selector switch. Again, if it's in the bottommost position, it's the bridge. If it's in one up, it's these two. If it's just the middle position, then it's going to be just the middle. If it's in one more forward, then it's these two, and if it's all the way up, then it's just the neck. This Stratocaster here in specific does have a push-push pot here. Now what this one does, and again, this isn't on all Strats, just this one specifically, if you push it and it goes up, that means you're basically adding the neck to whatever position you're in. So for example, if you're all the way down, meaning it's just this pickup, and then you engage that pot right there, that means that the neck pickup, it's going to be these two. And if you're in the second position without this engaged, it's just going to be these 2 pickups, but if you engage that pot there, then it's going to be all 3 because it adds the neck position into whatever position you're already in. I don't want to confuse you if you guys are new, but that's just this Stratocaster in specific, or this model exactly. So not all of them are going to come with that, but this one does. And let's talk about the necks real quick. Gibsons do have the ever-famous problems with their neck angle. If you look at a Strat here, it is just completely straight, meaning there's not much string tension, meaning you have to have these string trees here, which will keep the tension. While what Gibsons will do is they add an angle to your headstock there, angles it back, which adds that string tension. That way you don't need the string trees. However, that comes to the problem of this area right here not being the strongest just because there's not a lot of wood and there's a ton of tension going this way. So basically, if a Gibson gets dropped on the headstock like that at a high rate of speed, there's a high chance of it breaking, and we don't want that because these are not cheap. You can still find Stratocasters that have broken headstocks, although it is not nearly as common as finding a Gibson instrument with a broken headstock. I've been lucky enough, I've never broken a headstock on any of the guitars I own, so let's hope I keep it that way. Another issue with the Gibson headstocks is the break angle from the nut to the tuning pegs. Because this is such a sharp angle, a lot of times you're going to run into tuning stability issues, especially with the G string here. Now, I don't have any issues with any of the tuning stability on my Gibsons, but a lot of people do. So it is something to keep in mind. Let's talk about the weight of these guitars. The Gibson SG has a very thin body, which makes it super, super light. The Strat here is much thicker, as you can see, but it is still a pretty light guitar. Well, right behind me, if you see my Les Paul, that's a significantly heavier guitar because it's just much bigger. Well, both these guitars are very light, although the SG is a little bit lighter. Now, both of these guitars are very comfortable guitars, and both of them have their pros and cons when it comes to the comfort. When talking about balance, I'm definitely going to give balance to the Fender Strat. With the Fender Strat, if you set it on your lap here, you don't really have to worry about holding it up, that way it doesn't headstock dive, and you also don't have to worry about holding the neck down, that way it doesn't fall off the end like this. Fender Strats are weighted almost perfectly, that way you don't really have to worry about it, you could just worry about playing. Not only that, but the bodies are also a little bit more comfortable. Again, SGs are also very comfortable, but these ones, they have the belly carve here, which adds a nice little comfort carve to your ribs there, as well as it's curved on the back here, which adds a nice little rest for your forearm. This is a very, very comfortable and ergonomic guitar to play. The SG, again, is also a very comfortable guitar just because of how small and light it is. But if you're going to rest a guitar on your lap here, you're going to have to hold the neck up because of Gibson's ever-famous headstock dive. That is a major problem with the SG, and that's just because the bodies are so much lighter than the necks and headstocks, meaning it's not exactly balanced the best. Now, there are ways you can counteract this with adding some lighter weight tuners, as well as you can add some weights in the bottom of the body here, or you can get a super grippy strap that just kind of keeps it in place. But if you're just playing without any straps or anything like that, just want to come straight out of the factory, it's gonna headstock dive. It's not the end of the world, but it is something to keep in mind. And the body of the SG is super, super comfortable just because it's so light. It's right up close to your body, which is great, although it doesn't have that belly carve there necessarily. I guess it has a little one there, but it's not nearly as drastic as the Stratocaster one, nor does it really have much of a carve here, other than the bevel around the edge here, which is still perfectly comfortable. But one thing that comes to comfort and playability, which I'll talk about next, is the high fret access. Just due to the shape and the thinness of an SG, it is super, super easy to get right up on these high frets, just because the neck and the heel area is very thin. You're able just to play right up on these these frets here. You could basically play the pickup if it had frets on it. While the Strat here is not bad, you could still get up to those frets, it is not nearly as comfortable because of how thick the heel is. It really gets in the way of your hand, and you kind of have to wrap around the heel in order to get to these frets here. It's just not quite as comfortable and playable as the SG when it comes to the upper fret access, although again, it is still not bad. And speaking about playability, let's talk about the scale length. The scale length is the playable distance on your guitar, that going from the nut all the way to the saddles on your bridge. The Fender instruments do have a longer scale length, meaning the distance between the nut and the bridge are slightly longer than that of a Gibson instrument. That means that there's going to be less tension on the strings just due to the physics of it, making these ones slightly easier to play and do bends and stuff like that. Now, that doesn't mean that these guitars are hard to play, it just means that there's going to be a little bit more tension on the strings, making it a little bit harder to bend. And next up, let's talk about price. If we're comparing these two guitars here, both of these are American made and they go for about the exact same price. In 2019, when the SG came out, this one was worth $1,500, and the Fender Strat here was also $1,500 whenever it was released. Not from history, but I'm talking about when I actually bought these guitars. Now, I do believe, due to inflation, that both of these guitars are more expensive than that now. I don't think it's by all of that much, though. One thing I will give the edge to Fender on in terms of price is they do have their Player Series. The Player Series are basically a very similar instrument to this, except it's not made in the United States, and they have a little bit cheaper components, I believe. That basically allows you to get a very, very similar instrument, which is still a fantastic guitar, for a little bit cheaper. While all Gibsons are made in the United States, and they just don't have that. They do have the Epiphone range of guitars, which are also just fantastic instruments, but you won't get that logo on the headstock. Take that for what you will, it doesn't really matter that much, but it's something to keep in mind. That's basically the main differences of these guitars. Now, let's plug them in, and I'll show you how they sound. So basically that wraps it up for this video. After all you've heard today, which one do you think is for you? Let me know in the comments below, and if you guys liked this video, feel free to click like. And if you loved it and you want to see more content from me, subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.